In this video, I'm going to show you how you can save Webflow form submissions to Airtable. So right here, I have this project inquiry form, and whenever someone fills out this form on my Webflow site, what I want to happen is that inside of Airtable, inside of this leads table, a new row should automatically be created. So that's where we want to save the form submissions. And the Webflow project is this one right here. We're going to use Webflow Logic to achieve all of this. Logic is Webflow's automation tool, kind of similar to Zapier and Make. I will put a link to the clonable of this project into the video description as it is right now, so that you can clone it right now into your own Webflow account and build alongside with me. One thing I would like to mention before we get started is, as a little side note, this form right here is quite a simple form. So as you can see, we only have a couple of inputs. If you want to build a much more complex form, if that is interesting to you, feel free to check out my new Webflow app that I've created. It's called Input Flow and allows you to build really cool multi-step forms with Webflow. So for example, you can have calculations, multiple steps, branching, logic, validations, and much more. So if that is interesting for you, go to inputflow.io and check it out. Okay, but for this form, this is a simple form. We do not need input flow for that. So we're now going to get started with the Airtable integration. To get started, I click on this logic button right here in the left toolbar. And then I click on flows. Then I click on new flow at the top right. This creates a new automation, and flow in the Webflow ecosystem is just another word for automation. The flow name, I'm going to name it Save Project Inquiries to Airtable. So that is the name of the automation. Then I click on this trigger block. So the trigger is the action that starts the automation. In our case, we always want to run the automation when a form submission happens. And for this trigger name, I'm going to write Project Inquiry Form Submission. And then I have to select a form. In this case, I'm going to choose the project inquiry form that we looked at in the beginning. Next, we have to configure the action. So the action is that we send the form data that we get from step number 1 to Airtable. For that, I'm going to use the make HTTP request block right here, and I drag it onto this plus icon. And then I give it a name, send form data to Airtable. For the authentication, I choose API token. And then I want to add the API token to the header. That is just what Airtable wants. And then I choose the authorization header. So you just have to type in authorization here, make sure that it is spelled correctly. Then for the credential, I'm going to skip this for now. We're going to look at this in a few minutes. Next, I have to set the request method. I set it from get to post. Then inside of this general section right here, I have to add a URL. It says add the URL for the service. This is basically just a link where we have to send the data to, so the Airtable link. And we get that link from Airtable itself by opening up the table where you want to store the data, where you want to save the form submission. In my case, I have this leads table here, so I opened it up. And once you've done that, you click on this help button at the top right with the question mark, and then click on API documentation at the bottom right. This now opens up the API documentation for this exact table. On the left side in the menu, you can see there are a few points, and here it says leads table. And that is because my table is called leads. If your table would be called events, then here it would say events table. So you click on that, and then you click on create records, because this is exactly what we want to do. We want to create a new record, a new row inside of our Airtable. On the right, you can now see the structure of the data that Airtable expects. First of all, we have to send a post request to Airtable. And as you can see in Webflow Logic, we've already set the request method to post, so that's good. And next, we have to send the data to this URL. to this link. So this link is specific to the leads table. I copy this, go back to the Webflow project, and enter the link right here. Perfect. Next, we have to add these two headers right here, the authorization header and the content type header. I'm going to skip the authorization header for now. We're going to focus on that in a few moments. But I want to add the content type header. So I copy this, content type name, go back to Webflow logic, click on headers, and paste content type as the header name. And application JSON is the value. So I copy this, go back to logic and paste it in as the header value. Perfect. And now the only thing that is left is we have to send the data to Airtable. And you can see the good thing about this is that Airtable has already provided us with some example data here. You can see the records that are displayed here for each field. So each field here corresponds to a row in our database. So we have the rows name, company name, email, budget min, budget max, and service. And for this example data, Airtable has provided us with the exact same structure. So we have name, company name, email, budget min, max, and service. This is perfect because now what we can do is we can just copy this data. So I copy everything inside of the single quotes. Important, not the single quotes itself. I click on copy, go back to logic, and paste this into the body field. The only problem that we have now is that this example data has two fields. So we have two records inside of here, the first one and the second one. But we only want to process one form submission at a time. So whenever a form submission happens, we only want to create one new row in our Airtable database. And that means I'm going to delete this first record right here, starting from the comma all the way up here. And also delete the empty line. And now there's only one record left. Perfect. Now the next thing we have to do is we have to dynamically pull in the data of the input values that the website visitor filled out when they submitted the form. Because right now you can see this is just example data, this is just text, and whenever this automation would run, at least in this state, the name would always be the same, it would always be Mike Tyson, but obviously we do not want that, we want the name of the person that filled out the form, so the value of this input field. So to set this up, I'm going to delete the name. So I delete everything inside of the double quotes, but I leave the double quotes and then click on this purple plus icon at the top left. And then I click on form fields. And then I choose the name. Next, I'm going to do the same thing for the company name. Also remove everything inside of the double quotes. Then click on the purple plus and add the form fields company name variable. Same thing for the email. I remove everything inside of the double quotes, purple plus, form fields, email. Now the budget min and budget max, these are number inputs, meaning I do the same thing, but this time I do not put them inside of double quotes. This is important. So for the budget min, I add the form field budget min. This is this one right here, and the budget max is this one. So let's also do it for the budget max, form fields, budget max. And the service, this is a text element again, or a radio button, and this is inside of double quotes, and I click on plus, form fields, and service. Now we're almost done now. The only thing that is left is we have to set a placeholder or a default value for the name and the company name. You can see that because the yellow tool icon is being displayed. This means Webflow logic wants us to configure a fallback value in case the input value is empty. So I click on the settings icon, and then you could either enter a fallback value now, or you could just hit space, delete it again, and then this would be an empty fallback value essentially. And I do the same thing here for the company name, hit space, delete it again, and then we have an empty fallback value. Perfect. Okay, now there's only one last thing that we have to do here, and that is we have to now set up the credential. This is the part that we skipped a few moments ago. So I'm going to click on select a credential and then click on new credential. So a credential is basically just a kind of a password or an authorization that allows us to send data to this Airtable database, so that we show Airtable that we're allowed to do this. And for the name, I'm going to call this, let's call it Project Leads Airtable Credential. The description, I leave that empty. And for the type, I choose API token. And now the token itself, this is our kind of password or passkey to access this table. We get this from Airtable again. So I open Airtable, I go back to my Airtable database. And then I click on my account up here at the top right on the account icon and then Developer Hub. Then I click on the blue button, create a new token. I give this a name. Let's call it Project Leads Token. The scope, this is essentially what I'm allowed to do with this token. In this case, I want to select data records write. So that means I can add new rows to the database. And the access, this is the Project Leads Airtable based where I want this to be active on. And then I click on create token. And now important, we get this pop-up where this token, which is our passkey, our password, is being displayed. You now have to immediately copy this because once you've closed that, this will not be shown to you again for security purposes. So copy it and then click on done. Then go to Webflow logic immediately and paste it here into the token field. And now important, you go to the beginning of this token field and type in bearer, the word bearer, and then space. Otherwise, this will not work. Really important. And then I click on create. And now, as you can see, it displays the credential. And both of our steps here have this green check mark, meaning they are complete now. So what we can do is we can click on this blue button at the bottom right and run a test with test data. On the left side here, we can now put in some example data to pretend that this would be a form submission. So I select some to indicate that I want to send some data. And let's say select design for the budget maximum. Let's put in, I don't know, 5,000. For the budget min, I put in 1,000. For the email, I put in isaac@example.com. For the company name, I put in, I don't know, Isaac Incorporated. And for the name, I put in Isaac Newton. So this is our sample data that could come from a form. And then I can press this blue button called Run Test. Now it sends the test data to Airtable. And it says the test request has been successful, and it displays the new entry inside of the database right here. Perfect. So now we know everything is configured correctly. Let's also have a look at our Airtable database. And you can see right here, this new row just popped up. Isaac Newton from Isaac Incorporated, isaacexample.com. Perfect. Now, the next thing that we do is I close this window and I publish this. And then click on Stage Flow for Publish. And now important, I go back to the Webflow project, close this window, and publish the entire Webflow project. Otherwise, this will not work. This would not be live otherwise. And only then can I go back to the live form, and we can now run a test with the actual live form. So I put in my name. My name is Albert for this test. albert.einstein@example.org. Company name is Albert LLC. What do you need? I need, let's say, development, and my budget is really high for this example. Then I click on Get in Touch. Now it sends the data to Airtable. We get a thank you. Your submission has been received, meaning everything worked on Webflow's end. Let's take a look at the Airtable database. And you can see we have this new entry now with the form submission, Albert from Albert LLC, albert.einstein@example.org. So this is exactly what we wanted. And this is the basic idea how you can save Webflow form submissions to an Airtable database. Now, as I said in the beginning, this right here is quite a simple form. And if you're interested in creating more complex forms with validations, calculations, and much more, then feel free to check out this video that I've recorded a few weeks ago about how you can create multi-step forms in Webflow. Okay, thank you for watching. My name is Mike. See you next time. Have a great day. Bye.